The Dreaming City is a long-kept Awoken secret hidden away to the outside system for years. If you've had a chance to visit the city so far in Forsaken, you've seen some of its mysteries housed deep within the bowels of this beautiful place. Today we're going to discuss the events leading up to the Taken War and what exactly Mara's thoughts were in this entire process. Hey there Guardians, welcome back to the channel. I'm super excited to jump into today's video. So this is part 3 from our series on how the Awoken were born. The first video discussed where the Awoken came from and their origin. The second video was about their setup and journey back to the reef, and today we will build upon that story leading up to the events of the Taken King. So if you are interested in the full story, those two videos kind of lay out the foundation for what we're going to talk about today. Previously, the Awoken ventured back to the reef and learned that their human ancestors gathered in this last safe city underneath an alien sphere called the Traveler. After a briefing from Mara and Aldrin, the Awoken in the reef wanted to board a ship and head back to Earth right away. They came all the way back to the solar system to save their ancestors. Why not just go back to Earth? At first, Mara resisted, but after a ship left without clearance, she gave any of the Awoken in the reef the chance to make their way back to Earth if they wished. This was their one and only chance. They had to get out now if they wanted to leave. Now, of course, the big risk here was the Fallen. This is why Mara was angry. She didn't want any of the Awoken leaving, right away, and with all these ships just leaving, the reef's cover may be completely blown. Sometime later, Mara, Aldrin, Xur, and the reef defended from a Fallen attack. After a brutal battle, Mara was not going to let the reef fall, and things proceeded as normal. Aldrin then brings back a creature known as an Ahamkara, a baby one, and gives it to Mara as a gift. She establishes a relationship with the young creature and plans to use it in the future for her plans in the Dreaming City and onward. This brings us up to part 3. Mara's death began in this mark. Later would come Eris, Morn, Osiris, Toland, and all the other accessories of the majestic suicide. Later would come the reef's tentative entanglements with the Vex and Cabal, Fallen and Hive, and the fateful decision to intervene when the House of Wolves turned earthward to conquer the last human city. Later there would be stories here untold, the Ahamkara and the subcreation of the Dreaming City, the Shatterstone fury of the Reef Wars, Brother Aldrin's journey into that garden, and great sweeping plots whose beginnings and consequences have been entirely expunged for the sake of elegance. Here's where the beginning began, at that moment when Mara bolted awake from her dream. Her circle of Techeuns lay with her in the misty winter cold chamber, and they came back groggily, their arguments stuttering with resync. She had dreamt a thought of absolute simplicity and perfection, and the thought had become a tooth and bitten her. It left a wounded shape like an X. Mara seized the pane of crystal paper, flashed it rigid and receptive with a touch, and wrote. So this next part for a little bit here might get confusing. You can skip forward if you want, but I'm going to read to you what Mara wrote. Now this feels like one of those, Destiny lore cards where you read it and you still are like, what the heck did I just read? I don't really understand it. So I'm going to try my best, read it to you, and then we'll continue onward with some more cards. I dreamt of a sword and bomb. I dreamt of the self-honing blade that has cut itself so fine it pierces the world and thus becomes the world. It is self-honing because it constantly whets itself against itself. I dreamt of death bearing this blade, or of something so closely allied with death as to be its synonym, so that to separate them would require a knife sharper than sharpness. Death raised up that blade and said, I cut all, and all I cut, I eat. Then death cut the bomb, and the bomb was broken and could not fire. I was in the bomb. I knew that death was the cut verb and that its only verb was to cut. Shapes and gliders. I dreamt of existence as a game of cellular automata. In this metaphor, there were only two things, shapes in the game world and the rules of the game world. The rules were the rules of life and death. I understood that the sword was the desire to escape existence as a shape in the game and to become the rule that made the shapes. This rule said only live or die. It had no other outputs and it could not keep secrets. Against it was the desire to become a shape so complex that it could within itself play other games. I dreamt of the sword that was death, and the rules sought out complexity and cut it to reveal simplicity within. I knew soon that we would be cut, for we were complex and full of secrets. I knew that it was coming. I knew that the stroke would fall and that I had to stop it. How can a bomb make use of a sword? How can the rule that separates life from death be killed? So at that point, Mara then stops writing. She says, I must go to the Dreaming City and use the Oracle engine. She then told her Techians, prepare my ship. So like I said, that is confusing. It probably sounds like a bunch of gibberish, but in these cards, Mara is basically preparing her plan for the Taken King and what she's ultimately trying to do in the future. So it was important to read that because some of it will come up in a little bit, and now you have a little bit of a sense of it and you'll be able to reference it when we talk about it again. 10 times and once more, Mara asked the Oracle engine to show her the sword that was death and the way that it would appear. 10 times and once more, the Oracle engine showed Mara an image of her family. First it showed her Giraido, laughing and bright with strength, who would recede and return later. Then it showed her Aldrin, her brother, who explored the ruins of fallen worlds and sought out challenges to test himself. Then it showed Mara her own face and lingered on the secret brightness of her eyes. Last of all, leaving Mara imperious with disdain toward her own feelings, it showed her Osana, who is her mother, who remained behind. In case you weren't here for previous videos, her mother decided to stay in the distributary where all the other Awoken were, so she didn't come back to the solar system with her, and Mara still thinks about that. So Mara dwelt on this puzzle from the Oracle engine. A mother who had remained behind, a sister with secrets, a brother who hunted and explored, and a woman who was plain and fierce. She understood then that the answer to her question lay within herself, and that to defeat what was coming, she would need a perfect understanding of herself. First of all, Mara went into the gardens and planted a flower for her mother. She thought that she still must be alive, though by now she might have forgotten her first daughter and her first son. Mother, she said, I asked to be your sister rather than your daughter, and so I denied you the chance to tell me your secret. The mother truth that is mapped in the negative space defined by the lies mothers tell their daughters. Well, here are my secrets. I love you. I have always loved you. Without you, I could never have been anything at all. Then she went to speak to her brother, but Aldrin was away on Mars and she found his empty chambers, the half-sharpened knives and racks of pistols. She knelt in grief and touched her hand to the floor where his pacing boots had scuffed the asteroid stone smooth. This was the shape of their siblinghood now, the pursuit of absences. Last of all, Mara went to Giraido. Jir was making a list of incredibly stupid and fatal tasks to post on a Guardian bounty board. I want to tell you the truth, Mara said. Ask me a question. Jir then said some smart question, not even worth saying because you won't understand it, and then Mara says this. Jir, my faithful wrath, please take my openness seriously, though I'm sure Ilin could answer your math problem. Okay, Jir looked at her curiously. Then here's my question. What's gotten into you? Why are you acting like this? Mara then asked her, can we talk? Mara and Jir then go out into space and kick off the hall, wearing Corsair skin pressure suits and slim tethers. The stars circle them like hard focused candles, like the diadems of a trillion dancers. Giraido pulls herself close and touches helmets with Mara. We're alone. What's happened, Mara? You've always been, private, Mara suggests. Mysterious and reclusive, I was going to say, said Jir. Mara then goes on to talk about the whole bomb and sword thing, gives some crazy comeback, and Jir's like, alright, you told me something that could be a secret, but that's not the secret you need to tell me. What's it actually about? She says, I have this secret, this thing I did, and I don't know if anyone can know it without hating me forever. I had a secret too, Jir reminds her, the thing I did. Yeah, it's nothing compared to mine, nothing at all. Having had some long experience hating you and then giving it up, I think it would be hard for me to go back. Jir's strong hand settles on the small of Mara's back. They twirl on upward, rotating around a point between them, their 1,000-kilometer tethers slowly unfurling. Do you want to tell me? No, Mara says, but I think I have to. Okay, Your Majesty, what did you do that made Alice Lee throw blackberry tea in your face? I was first, Mara says, and she explains the missing half, the first half of the sentence. I made the rules and initial conditions that deceived her into believing she herself had decided. It ends like that, where the rest picks up. Giraido looks at her in expressionless silence. Her hands stroke the seam between Mara's skin suit and the glassy petals of her helmet. Long ago, this woman betrayed her oath and went to serve the Diasrim, a woman who cried out in anguish the curse of physicality and the possibility of suffering. Long ago, this woman threw away her whole life to punish the highest crime she could imagine, the denial of transcendent divinity to those who might have claimed it. You're the devil, Zhur says. You're the lone power who made death. You allowed the possibility of evil. You might be responsible for more preventable suffering than anything that has ever existed. Mara cannot shake her head or even nod. Well, Zhur says, if you hadn't, none of us would be here. I guess I don't see what else you could have done if you cared about those we left behind. If you wanted us to be able to go back and help in the fight, she leans forward and very gently kisses the inside of her helmet where it meets Mara's. In her mind, to be in the place that is bound to all other Awoken, Mara feels the touch of gentle lips. Zhur looks suddenly sly. You know, Mara, I don't think you could have confessed anything at all unless it were a way of keeping a deeper secret. What's really going on? There are many ways of godhood, Mara tells her. The belt of Orion glitters on her helmet like the 3-star rating left by some hive entity Zhur once killed. One way is to kill all that is killable so that the remains must be immortal. Another is the road I have walked, mostly by accident. One of these ways is closer to the sword and one is closer to the bomb. If the bomb can defeat the sword by standard of the sword, then the bomb has claim to primacy. Never mind, Zhur sighs. Seen anything cool on Crow surveillance lately? So that card is pretty crazy and complains the whole gibberish stuff I read from Mara's note earlier. So first, Mara thinks about her family because of the projections that the Oracle engine showed her. It showed her her mother, it showed Aldrin, Zhur, and even Mara's face itself. So she goes out in the garden, plants a flower, and talks to this guy about her mother for a bit. She then searches for Aldrin, but appears he's on Mars, probably messing with the Black Garden, and then she goes to talk to Zhuraido. Now just a little side note, you might be noticed I'm pronouncing that a little bit different. I did hear some new voice lines from the expansion that pronounce it that way, so I think that's the correct way, so I'm gonna go with that from now on. So Mara and Zhur meet together outside the hull of the ship on their tethers. They then have some moments and Mara explains the truth about what actually happened in the distributary and about how there is many ways to godhood. So first she says something pretty crazy, that she was the first Awoken, and she basically persuaded Alice Lee, who was the first queen of the Awoken or thought to be, into sort of believing in Mara's ideals. She says, I made the rules and initial conditions that deceived her into believing she herself had decided. So Alice Lee thought she was behind all this when in fact it was Mara. The second thing to talk about is godhood, and after discussing that for a bit, they laugh it off, and then the card ends. The Tyrannicide 5 card basically fast forwards to the events of the Taken King, where the whole Awoken fleet got destroyed.
The Awoken have played their part. This was all part of the plan.
She closes her eyes. Oryx's throne world smashes through her fleet, the bubble of everted scream space pulverizing rock, metal, and flesh as mere matter surrenders to the will-made fact of the Taken King. Somewhere, Aldrin roars in defiance. This is the moment of absolute sacrifice, the incarnation of Awoken doom to give up their lives in defense of the world they once abandoned. The sense of their great dying rips at Mara like a sob. She feels her Techians preparing emergency self-gates. Shirochi reaches out to her, a wordless, urgent need for Mara to live. And it takes all cold and passive remove of Mara's millennia to turn that hand away. The shockwave then strikes, and Mara dies. In one way, she is vaporized with her catch, the bonds between the very particles of her body questioned by the harrowing logic of Oryx's weapon and found inessential. The mechanism of devastation is spontaneous fission. The author of devastation is laughing in joy. In another way, a more true and symbolic way, she is impaled on Oryx's blade. She has thrown all of her might at him, and he has answered. He has snuffed her fledgling divinity and her meager claim to royalty. He has exposed Mara to the raw and caustic hostility of this high war. She has been defeated by the sword logic. She dances down the blade and steps into his throne world. The Harbingers give her the gate and she takes the step. She is dead, consumed by Oryx. She is dead in his will, his ascendant realm. There is no way inside except this true way. In this process, Mara enlisted Eris and several million mad dancing guardians to go knock off a god who killed her. It is on that level a very simple bank heist. Get yourself taken into the treasury of treasure, and when the owner dies, break out with his stuff. Mara thinks of everyone she has ever known, all the people she has lost, even back to Yang Liwei and that ray of light in the deepest darkness. She is there again, on that tether, falling into the mystery. Her brother is crying out for her, trying to follow, and she cannot look back. Oryx's throne world tries to tear her body and physique into a quintillion screaming pieces, but Mara has survived the primordial chaos before space and time. She has retained her selfhood through far worse than this, and she has patience for eons. Eris will succeed, the Guardians will play their part. When the power in this world is free for the taking, Mara will take it, not as the victor taking spoils, but as the scavenger takes the prize component for her masterwork. When a pawn reaches the far side of a chessboard, it may be promoted to a queen. And what hatches when you promote a queen? What new board does she claim her place on? Well, Mara knows. She settles in for the long wait, entirely alone, almost at peace.
My queen. You were right. The Guardian was the key.
So there it is, we learn Mara's ultimate plan all through the Taken King, and this finally explains the cutscene between her and Eris when, Eris says, "I will not let you fail," and she talks about her queen. So many people thought, hey, maybe Savathun is Eris's queen, but it is still Mara Sov. So in the end, Mara made this plan with Eris Morn to use the Guardians to go in there and slay the Taken King. When he was dead, her plan was to take over this throne and take up the position. Now all that we did when we killed Oryx was left the throne vacant, and many characters like Tolan got really mad at us because we didn't take the spot. So this in time was going to be Mara's plan. She was going to take over the spot when Oryx was dead, but things eventually didn't really turn out as she was planned, and she was sort of trapped in this ascendant plane. Anyway, Guardians, that's all I got for today's video. This wraps up part 3 of our series on how the Awoken were born, and the events that took place from that spawn in the Distributary, heading back to the solar system and the Reef, and ultimately how Mara's plan ended in the Taken King. If you'd like to see some more awesome videos just like this one, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I thank you very much for watching. Anyway, my name's Evade, and I'll catch you Guardians in the next one.